Elemental Shaman has seen some pretty, actually, big changes to his talent tree. A lot of things have been moved around, and the talent tree definitely looks different. And today we will be talking about that and see exactly what is happening with Elemental on beta. And listen, if you like these types of videos and you want to see more of the daily content from Marcelian&Flame with everything that we do, from beta specs coverage at this point to tier lists and streams and podcasts and main series videos and more series in the future, consider becoming one of our patrons. It supports us directly. We'd be super grateful. It actually helps us be able to do this on a daily basis and constantly put out really awesome content. The Patreon link is down in the description. You can check our Patreon page. It has a bunch of tiers depending on what exactly you feel like doing. Obviously, any contribution is very appreciated. We really love you for considering supporting us on our Patreon platform. And with that out of the way, let's talk about Elemental, ladies and gentlemen. And this was slightly controversial when it came out, although not as much as other specs, I would imagine. But for Shaman, this might have had maybe the most amount of issues in its initial inception that we've covered some time ago, a month or two ago, maybe something like that. Now it's looking different. Well, first of all, in the general talent tree, since we already covered most of them on enhancement, it's pretty much the same. Frost Shock, again, is very early into the talent tree, and if you don't take Ice Fury, you probably will skip it. And stuff like improved Lightning Bolt is something, again, that you might be able to skip in, let's say, Mythic Plus, where you're probably not gonna cast Lightning Bolt very much. Now, obviously, in AoE, you'll probably cast Chain Lightning, but you can throw a lot of meatballs with the meatball build in the general talent tree, which we will check in a second. And if you look at the spec talent tree, you'll see it that it's, you know, changed. First of all, you obviously start with Earth Shock and Earthquake, and the most noticeable changes on the right side, you have Fire Elemental and Storm Elemental being choice nodes right off the bat instead of them being like spread out weirdly in the talent tree. And obviously these can define the build that you're going to go for, since obviously Storm Elemental is very focused on Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, while Fire Elemental is Meatball City. Now, right underneath it, you have 3 choice nodes of pure utility, which is something that I actually love to see. I don't want to see utility at a choice node with damage, which is always weird and feels awkward to take. But now, since you have to take any kind of utility, you'll take the utility that you want, and you have so many choices, which is really fucking cool. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be something that forces you into Tumultuous Fissures and Inundate. On the left-hand side, what Tumultuous Fissures does is makes Earthquake have a chance to knock enemies down, and have that chance increased by 3%. And Inundate makes so that your successful Purges, Cleanse Spirit, Healing Stream, Totem, Hex, and Wind Shear cast to generate 8 Maelstrom during combats. That might be relevant because you'll probably want to use those every now and again. And Tumultuous Fissures basically adds Earthquake functionality on the left-hand side just under Earthquake, which is slightly weird because the left-hand side definitely feels like Lightning City. So maybe that's, I don't know, not too bad because it does go down into Call of Thunder and so on. And if you do skip this, you can still get Ice Fury. It might be forced into Ice Fury if you go down the middle path, which I guess, you know, it is a specific mechanic of Elemental that hasn't gone away, and it's, you know, using Frost Shock to a heavy extent. You also have Surge of Power as a choice node with Aftershock, and it looks like it can be useful this time with certain builds. I don't remember playing Surge of Power for a long time. We'll see exactly, because it was always really interesting to use, while Aftershock is actually very fun whenever it procs. Flames of the Cauldron, all the way on the right-hand side, reduces the cooldown of Flame Shock by 1.5 seconds, and Flame Shock deals damage 15% faster, and is now in place of what was before improved Flame Tongue weapon, which was moved down in the Storm Elemental's place, so you can skip it if you don't want the extra fire damage, especially when playing Storm-style playstyles. I would imagine Lightning Bolt stuff. Nature damage, let's just say. Searing Flames were swapped with Magma Chamber. Again, in case you don't want to play heavy Flame Shocks, you can get more accessible Magma Chamber for more passive or shock Earthquake damage, which is really good. Basically, what Magma Chamber does is makes Flame Shock damage increase the damage of your next Earth Shock, Elemental Blast, or Earthquake by 0.7%, stacking up to 20 times. If I'm not mistaken, this might be a legendary that we have right now, or at least a mechanic that we've been playing with on Elemental. And going down into the Capstone, you have Wind Speaker's Lava Resurgence at a choice node with Skybreaker's Fiery Demise. It's basically the 2 legendaries that we have right now in Shadowlands, which I actually really love. They're really cool. Wind Speakers, if you haven't played Elemental so far, this makes it so that when you cast Earth Shock or Elemental Blast, which is nice that they've added Elemental Blast in it, you gain Lava Surge and increase the damage of your next lava burst by 20%. While Skybreaker's Fiery Demise, Flame Shock damage over time, Critical Strike reduces the cooldown of your Fire and Storm Elemental by 1 second each, and Flame Shock has a 50% increased Critical Strike chance. So either way, even if you do end up playing the Storm Elemental, you'll probably still want to spread as many Flame Shocks if it's an AoE, or keep your main Flame Shock up 100% of the time. The other changes that you will have now will be under Primordial Wave, Rolling Magma to reduce its cooldown when you cast Lava Burst or when you get Lava Burst Overload. And you can pair this with the right talent and you'll have a Meatball Bonanza, and thanks to the RNG god, you will stay in Ascendant for a good amount of time, which is actually really cool. It's looking really, really nice. And a new Capstone will be a choice node between Heat Wave and Splintered Elements. Heat Wave makes casting Primordial Wave trigger Lava Surge immediately and every 3 seconds for 12 seconds, which sounds fucking ridiculous. And Splinter Elements makes it so that each additional Lava Burst or Lightning Bolt generated by a Primordial Wave increase your haste by 10%, which I think it's something that you definitely play with in Hasbro right now. If I'm not mistaken, this could be the Necrolord Covenant Legendary effect baked into the Capstone, which I guess, I mean, it's really cool. And finally, Elemental Blast is not a choice node anymore. It's further down the talent tree on the left-hand side. A 12-second recharge. It's a 2-second cast. And what it does is harnesses the raw power of the elements, deals a decent amount of damage, and increases your stats. It replaces Earthshock and consumes more Maelstrom, which this is a very contentious thing. It depends exactly on your Maelstrom generation and how your rotation plays, since you can feel sometimes very heavy on the Maelstrom generation. So this could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. Our boy Lego here tested it already, and it's as an Elemental Shaman that he's played before, feels like it's a little bit weird to have this dynamic into the rotation, and maybe that can be something that's exciting. It adds a new flavor to the rotation, something that you can use, since Elemental Blast prior to this was a Maelstrom generator. So that's interesting, and I'm actually excited to see how it actually plays in late game, since I will be touching Elemental. As a general conclusion for Elemental, it's actually looking really cool. There are some interesting capstones. One node that I don't remember playing with it initially, which is further beyond, making casting Earthshock or Earthquake while you're in Ascendance to increase the duration of the active Ascendance by 2.5 seconds. And casting Elemental Blast while Ascendance is up increases the duration by 3.5 seconds. If you do decide to take Elemental Blast, that will replace essentially Earthshock. Now, I'm not sure exactly how good it would be to have Elemental Blast in this situation, especially in single target, since we won't have it as often, but you can definitely have some interesting uptime on Ascendance and actually burst some cooldown. You still have Mountains Will Fall, which is a really interesting concept, making Earthshock, Elemental Blast, and Earthquake trigger the Overload at your Mastery Overload at 50% of its effectiveness. But the obviously Overload Earthquakes do not knock any enemies down, because that would be a little bit ridiculous. Like, you wouldn't fight anything ever, because they would all be on their asses. And with this out of the way, it's actually looking way better in my opinion so far as a noob Elemental trying to figure out what builds I will play. This is looking really cool. I am excited for Elemental. It's kind of been like a sleeper for the past couple of patches. It's not a bad spec, but it has been constantly outshined by a lot of other specs, so maybe this can breathe some fresh, new, Maelstromy love into this spec. But what do you think? Let us know in the comment section below. And thank you, dear patrons, for supporting the channel. If you want, dear viewer, to also be one of our patrons, the link to our Patreon platform is down below. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Peace!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.